So we call this here head belief. Let me give you an example of this. My dad witnessed to my grandmother for years. My grandmother was lost as a golf ball in high weeds. And my dad witnessed to my grandmother so much the gospel that if you went to my grandmother and you say, hey, what's the gospel? She'd say, oh, Rob says it's 1 Corinthians 15, 1 through 4, and how Christ died for your sins and was buried and rose again the third day. It's about how he shed his blood for you. And she could have told you the gospel better than most preachers in America today. Why? Because my dad drilled that into her head. This is how you get saved. But my grandmother didn't believe it. She had it in her head, but she didn't believe it in her heart. And I would witness to her, and she'd say, oh, I know that. And she would say this, she goes, I believe Jesus died for the sins of the world. So she had a belief, but it was in her head. She believed that that really happened, but she believed he did it for everybody else. She did not receive it for her. She wasn't looking at that by faith of, I believe and receive it for me. It was, he died for everybody. About 2 years, maybe a year or two before she died, and she said, son, she called me son sometimes even though I was her grandson. She said, I really want to listen to the gospel this time. Tell me again. And so I went through it with her again. And she looked at me and she said, you know what? I believe Jesus died on the cross for my sins. And I'm trusting in that blood that he shed for me to take me to heaven. It went from here to down there. And she received, through faith, the blood of Christ for salvation. And she died a saved woman. But thank God. So you got to get it up here first. It's all about the blood. And it's all about believing from the heart. It's one thing to say, I believe it. But are you believing it with your heart? This is where faith must come from.